Startup Unscripted. The questions you have with the truths you need to hear.
Help doctors get into practice the way they want to get into practice. Hashtag truth. That's why we put it out there. What we want to do is we want to bring truth to the startup game.
And now your host, Michael Dencio.
What up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Startup Unscripted. You guys know me. I'm Mike Dencio, founder and owner, one of the owners of Next Level Consultants. Super excited to continue this week of Kids Teeth Week. As you all know, it's sponsored by SuperMouth, wearing the shirt today. SuperMouth is a great program. I've been talking about it, listened to all the episodes. We even had the opportunity to interview Dr. Haas, who's one of the founders of SuperMouth. Again, I'm just going to say it one more time. If you've missed any of the other episodes, my kids love this stuff. It's a fact. It's the one thing that got them. One of the things that got them really excited about brushing their teeth and really appreciating the value of their oral health, makes them excited. Superhero theme. They have non-fluoride and fluoride options. They've got programs from infants all the way up to our age. I think SuperMouth is a really cool system that you guys can leverage. And the most favorite thing about it is it creates a residual income in your business. And a lot of you guys, selling toothpaste and stuff is a business, but this is kind of like an intentional program that sends the kits out to my house. So that's why we get it. And then you're creating a revenue program within the office. And I just think it's so smart, and it's fun. They've got a movie. My kids watch the movie. They still watch it. It's fun. So anyway, SuperMouth, we'll throw a commercial on the back end of this program. All of the SuperMouth information is going to be below. A little bit more housekeeping, and I'm sorry, but we just have to do it. I've mentioned it in some episodes in the past. In about a month or two, give or take, we are condensing both the Startup Unscripted program, which is what you're listening to now, and the Dental Acquisition Unscripted brand and program into one big, overarching program called Dental Unscripted. So I want you guys to go over and subscribe right now to Dental Unscripted, because all of our episodes, startup specific, acquisition specific, will be on that new program called Dental Unscripted, but with a flavor of practice ownership tips, because now I've helped so many of you guys get into ownership. Now you're wondering about how to run your business a little bit better. And that will be all under one house called Dental Unscripted. So, all right, sorry for all the commercials and all the things. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. And I'm lucky to have a fellow podcaster and a dentist in your guys' community, specifically in pediatric dentistry. Dr. Casey is on the other side of this. He is the owner of Quiver Creek Pediatric Dentistry in Northeast Missouri. He did a startup 4 years ago, and he's absolutely crushing and dominating. His podcast is called Brews and Tiny Teeth. So get over there and subscribe to that one. He said earlier, before we even started, he's not super active on it, but there's some great episodes that you can check up on that. But Dr. Casey, thanks so much for being on the program, man.
Yeah, Michael, appreciate you having me. And, I do still, so the kicker is I do the podcast still, but when I created the podcast because there's no other pediatric dentist in Northeast Missouri. And once you get into the startup life and you get busy, eventually it becomes feeling more like work, and that initial like adrenaline rush of opening the practice fades, and then it becomes kind of isolating. And so it was more so my way of networking and meeting up with other dentists. And so I think I've talked to pediatric dentists from like almost 40 states and done a couple hundred episodes, and I still do an episode. I do one every 2 weeks. But it was more themed to drinking beer. Like I would like beer and whiskey.
More about beer.
Yeah. Right. So we'd have a drink, talk shop. But I would do them at night. And now that I'm a dad, my nights are more tied up. So I still do the podcast. I just have to like squeeze them in over lunches and mornings over coffee more than over like a stiff bourbon or something.
Love it. Love it. Well, There's nothing illegal about drinking and podcasting. Now, could
No.
be dangerous, but
Yeah.
it sounds like you figured out how to do it the right way.
Right. Right.
That's awesome, dude. I love it. So Brews and Tiny Teeth. Let's get into your story, man, because I just found that most people trail off after a few minutes, and I burned through all of that with my housekeeping stuff. So let's get into the meat. So Dr. Casey, you started a practice about 4 years ago, about the time I started this podcast, actually. So back in 2020, we were all going crazy, and that's when you decided to go ahead and set up shop. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's right. Yep. And so backing up just a little bit, I don't come from a dental family, but I knew I wanted to do pediatric dentistry. I worked at an engine shop in college over the summers, like fixing engines and small parts and stuff like that. And a pediatric dentist came in and we hit it off, and he invited me to come shadow his practice. So I went and shadowed the practice, and within like 30 seconds knew this is what I wanted to do. And so I was able to come up with a plan, a 10-year plan to get, be like this guy. And overarching theme here is like find good mentors, surround yourself with good people, as well, kind of agree. But he was really instrumental in getting me down the path pediatric dentistry. But so yeah, working at an engine shop is what kind of led me into to become a pediatric dentist. But I wanted a practice that was like his, small practice, small town, super busy. And he really knew his numbers and knew the business side of things.
I love that.
So
a really good mentor to you. Really good mentor to you.
A good friend of mine to this day. And we do dentistry. He's very old school, and I'm kind of new school. But I was able to kind of use him as a springboard. And it's just you're gonna hear me say it a few times, but like doing a good successful startup is just following a recipe of other very smart people that have done the same thing before and just emulating what they do. And he was that guy for me. So you got to find your person, and he was a good mentor to kind of get me kicked off and started.
Well, that's a selfish plug for Next Level. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but when you do something over and over and over, we do 25 to 30 startups a year and have for many years, we've ran into all the problems, right? And so it really is about following a recipe, and you can't bake good cupcakes without following the recipe to the perfection, right? And so that's all it is. I will say though, podcasts like this and books and whatever else you're watching or reading and listening to, I will say there is a caveat to that, and that is what we discussed today may not fit you in your situation, in your demographic, in your geographical location. So I find that really honing in on what you're trying to do and finding your team, like Dr. Casey said, is the key. So, all right. So 4 years ago, you got into pediatric dentistry and owned your own practice. It's a rural area, rural community.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. So like we were saying, I did residency. I did all my training at the University of Iowa. Dental school, knew I want to do peds, so I matched there, did my 2-year residency. The entire time I was in dental school, knowing that I wanted to be a practice owner and do a startup or own my practice right away, I kept a big binder with all of, a bunch of startup materials. You do lunch and learns in dental school. A finance guy would come, or a practice lender, or somebody who does dental construction would come, and I'd keep all that paperwork and all that information, would keep it in a binder, was very organized, started working on a business plan very early in residency. So I really feel like, if you know that wanting to do a startup and being a practice owner is for you, what's nice is you can start that practice really early, start gathering your team. So I worked on all that during residency. I needed to do a little bit of associating because my wife had some school to finish up. She had 1 more year of training. She's a pharmacist. So we did that up in Minneapolis. I worked up there for 8 months. Then COVID hit, shut the whole place down. I love my associateship, but I'm like, man, it's a now or never thing. Like, this is the time to pull the trigger. I've saved up some cash. I got my speed up. I've got a game plan. And so the pandemic ended up being a blessing in disguise, where I had hours every day to, I learned how to do some web design. I designed my own logo. I built my own website. I got lending secured. I started shopping for, doing the demographic analysis, found my lease space, negotiated that, did the build out process. I learned how to do basic bookkeeping. I just had, you kind of turn lemons into lemonade, if you will. Yeah. And so it ended up working out great. The pandemic was a blessing in disguise for myself.
It really was for a lot of people. It gave you a lot of time, but also kind of scary to not know where we were all going to land. I want to back up. So before we kind of get into the mechanics, this whole program kind of goes through that blending and vision and, you know, demographics. I want to pause right there. You chose to go in a rural area. Did you do demographics? Did you know that area needed another dentist, a pediatric dentist?
Yeah, I knew it did. So I wanted to be moderately close to family, which we have family in Iowa, Missouri. My wife's from Illinois. I like Midwest. I'm a Midwest guy.
Whoop, whoop.
Yeah, let's
Yep.
go. Where are you from, Michael?
Ohio.
Oh, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a big hunter outdoorsman, so I like the farm scene. So I took a big map of Iowa and Missouri and was putting pins in where all the pediatric dentists were. So you're looking for, my idea was I want to find a town that's growing, that's a bedroom community, has a lot of people, a lot of kids. You don't want something stagnant that's 4 hours from the nearest, grocery store, but something that's got some growth, but no competition, no pediatric dentist. And I found a few pockets, but the one that worked best was Northeast Missouri. So I'm the only pediatric dentist, or the last pediatric dentist, between the northern suburbs of St. Louis all the way up to the Iowa border. And there was
And
a huge need. And I mean,
how many, can you quantify that? How many people or families that feed into your kind of zone, your area?
Yeah. So the county that I'm in, so the town is only 15,000 people, but it's kind of a bedroom community for St. Louis. So there's about 60,000 people in the county, but I also funnel down all the kids throughout Northeast Missouri. And so I couldn't tell you how many, but
So the drive time, people driving how far to get to you?
hours. Yeah, I
Hours.
have a map in my office where people can put pins where they're from, and it's like a big funnel from all of Northeast Missouri up to the Iowa border. People drive hours. I do a lot of sedation work, referrals, very referral heavy. Sedate them, fix the kids' teeth, send them back.
Yep.
But we'll talk about it a few times. But picking your demographics right, if you had to pick it down or narrow it down to one key thing that's going to determine how successful you are, how quick are you to break even, what your whole financial perspective and just the health of the business is going to be. Demographics are everything when it comes to doing a startup. And I'm very much a fan of a semi-rural type environment where you don't have a lot of competition. I can't get a Starbucks every morning, but there's a local coffee joint down the road that the lady brings her kids to me, still makes good coffee. So there's give and takes to it. But when you run the numbers, it just makes so much more sense if you can find that sweet spot where there's not a pediatric dentist, you don't have the competition.
I couldn't agree more. I would say that the majority of my clients, pedo, GP alike, are chasing areas that have some competition. And it's not that I'm against competition. Quite frankly, you guys can differentiate yourself in so many different ways. That SuperMouth is one of them, for example. But the point that I'm making is your customer experience and all the things can differentiate yourself. But when it comes to startups and picking location, everybody calls me, is like, what's the best location? Where do I go? Well, it's what Dr. Casey did. It's finding an area that isn't overly saturated, and competition's fine. Dr. Casey's like in a situation where there's nobody. It sounds like you don't have to find that. That's hard to find. But maybe just going on the outskirts, the emerging markets, places that are up and coming in the next 5 years, or on the foothills, like here in Washington, you name it. It's you like Dr. Casey said, you might have to drive 30 minutes to get a Starbucks, but that's okay because things are building out and development will come. But when it comes to new patient flow, the easiest marketing is just going in an area that doesn't have the work. So let's actually talk about that real quick. Day one, and folks, again, this is that disclaimer that I said, this is not going to be you. So don't think that this is going to be you. Day one, Doc, did you have patients showing up on your front door?
Yeah. I had, so the way that I did that, and I think worked out really well in retrospect, was about a month and a half, 2 months prior to opening, I started marketing, networking myself. Again, I had all this free time, practice being built. So I went to all the pediatricians, all the local referring general dentists, went to schools. I started passing out referral pads, business cards. I had my VoIP phone set up, so the office was all established, and parents would start calling in, and I have a voicemail set up. Quiver Creek's gonna be opening fall of 2020. If you're interested in an appointment, leave a voicemail. I would call parents back, get the name, get the info, chief complaint. So I had a list of 100 some kids ready for appointments the first day I opened. So I started by seeing 8 kids a day for comp exams. Started adding ops shortly thereafter. So by by the end of the first month, we were already running like two pretty solid columns, probably like anywhere from 12 to 15 to 20 kids a day just in the first couple months. But a lot of that goes in. I just had a good buddy that did a ped startup. He had so many other things going on. He didn't prioritize that. And that seems to be a common mistake, is like, you got to start getting that stone rolling early. Cause once it gets going, in peds, that's the benefit, a lot of word of mouth marketing, but you got to get it going early, and you can't wait till like 3 days before, or you're going to be sitting around with no patients.
I'm going to add that as a banner today, because I couldn't agree more. Start marketing early. I couldn't say that more. We had a doctor, a client in the Bay Area. I won't give his location up, but we had a delay in construction that was like 4 or 5 months because of permits or whatever. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. But what it did is it forced him to do what you did, which I try to get all of our clients to do, and that is to hit marketing early. He had 200 patients waiting for him to open because of that delay. So any of you that are dealing with construction issues, it's a blessing in disguise. I know that you're probably going to start paying that rent sooner, and you're burning up the free rent and all that good stuff. However, just think of that as an opportunity to really hit the ground running. So let's touch on that, because Doc, what you just said is, once we get kind of through the hiring the team and getting all the timelines in place, there's usually a 4 to 5, even 6 month kind of build out timeline. And to me, like, your team's set. Of course, you got to make a lot of decisions. You got to keep your construction team on par and on task. But during that 4 or 5 months before you open, I find that a lot of doctors are thinking, and they're nervous about their systems. They're thinking about their software. They're thinking about who they're going to hire and all that, when they should be thinking about marketing, because all the systems in the world could be in place. And if you don't have any patients, who cares about the system? Any light into that? You guys are high drivers. There's got to be a balance there. What do you think is more important, systems or marketing?
That's a great question. And I don't know if I'm actually going to be in the best position to answer that with any credibility, just because all of that comes with the asterisk. If you're in a rural area with no competition, it really actually doesn't matter that much, to be honest. Like, if you ask me what I spend on marketing every month, even in the beginning, it's always been like less than 0.5%. Like, even now it's probably
dollars wise. Yeah,
dollars. I mean, as a percentage of my overhead, it's like, I think so far this year, like, my marketing has consisted of, I donated a Yeti cooler to like a school fundraiser. It's just like giveaway fun stuff. Like, you don't have to market in the rural area. So super big perk if you're going to go rural or semi-rural, like, you go to a couple local meetings and get some word out, and the patients are going to start flowing in. But if I was practicing,
Doc,
maybe
let me set the stage, since you have experience. So, my average client has maybe 2 to 3 patients, kiddos, per day in their first month. And that probably continues on for a month and a half, 2 months. It's not busy at all.
Yeah.
So does that add any thoughts to your head?
To me, I don't know. I guess if I woke up and did another startup and there was only 2 or 3 kids on my schedule, I'd be concerned and probably not sleeping great. But my thought is, if I were to wake up and that were to happen, I always tell other like podcast listeners and stuff that want to do startups, like, you're not above. If you're sitting around, if you only have 2 or 3 patients scheduled in your day, that means you only have 2 or 3 hours of your day filled up. That means you've got another 10 hours in the day that you could be doing other things with. So like, if I'm you, like, you're literally not above pretending like you're running for mayor, and go walk over to the grocery store next door and meet the pharmacist. Go have, you can literally go door to door, look up current events, what's going on now. Like, there's always something you could be doing, and not just sitting back and waiting for the phone to ring. So if you make the mistake of not getting going right off the bat, then like, you got to make up for it by being very aggressive on the back end, as far as just getting your name out there to the community in whatever aspect that might be, or avenue that might be.
Thank you, Doc. Because the average startup sets up in Bellevue, Washington, Kirkland, Washington, Denver, Colorado, and it's maybe a 2,000 to 3,000 patients per pediatric dentist. You just said you had 15,000. So it's a total night and day. And I find that you can work on your systems, and you should. I'm not saying you shouldn't. I mean, our whole program the last 2 months is all about systems. But leading up to that opening day, 4 months before you open, doctor hit it right on the head, and that is just get out, be the mayor, talk to people. We're coming up on Halloween. Think about how many trick or treat or Halloween things are going on. I mean, the world is your oyster. Doc, what are some of those partnerships that you have today, or even when you first started, that you approached people like the Y or the library? I mean, do you have
I got a
any of
good one.
those?
Yeah, I got a good one. So very first day we moved to this area. Again, this is an area that I'm not from. We didn't really know pretty much anybody when we moved here. We went to go buy. So instead of buying stuff, here, let's summarize it here. Instead of buying stuff from Amazon, turn Amazon off for a month and force yourself to go buy those items from someplace in person. So like when we moved to Troy, Missouri, this area, we needed a new washer dryer. Instead of going to the big box store, we went to the local mom and pop shop, started talking to the salesperson, explained who I was, bought a washer from her, and gave her a business card, and she wound up scheduling her 3 kids, the next day. So just always have your business cards on you, always have a collar shirt on, and just like go interacting with local business owners and being a people person was huge. So yeah, furniture company was big. I got involved in some local daycares pretty quickly. I bought, another thing I did was the referral sources was key. I bought like $800 worth of Black Rifle coffee and stuck my face and business card on the front of each one with a handwritten letter. Went around to all the referring dentists with referral pads, like physically shook their hand in person during COVID when nobody was doing that.
I love that.
Gave out my personal cell phone number, but yeah,
people are probably thinking you were a weirdo.
kind of, yeah. It felt strange, but getting the referrals coming in boosted my my in-office GA really quickly, and that's what really drove us getting super profitable early on, was like doing those big cases. And so a lot of people now like to hate on having good referral sources, but
why is that? What do you mean?
I think it's because the kids come with issues, and they tend to have gotten messed with and had bad dentistry done, and they're not cooperative. But for me, like I don't want to work in a prophy palace where I'm doing 30 checks all day. Like I want hard cases. I want heavy hitter dentistry in the trenches, getting it fixed. So I tend to argue that with other providers. Like you want referrals, especially early on, because that's what's going to put butts in seats, money in the bank, is going to get you busy right away, is good referrals.
1000%. That's interesting that I'm hearing that from you. Obviously I talked to a lot of providers. The downside of that is it comes with a lot of baggage. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, essentially. Yep. Sometimes difficult parents, they tend to kick you the ones that are hard. The kid's not cooperative, mom's difficult.
Oh,
But
that makes sense, because they
yeah.
don't want to treat him. So they're like, oh, well, you went to school for dealing with this, so you deal with it.
But if you've got good systems, and that goes back to, with your systems in place, if you need to have the capacity to handle if you get a lot of kids early on. And so having your anesthesia in place early is really important. So don't wait until you have enough kids on your GA list to start the process. Get a good relationship with your anesthesia provider, or if you're doing hospital privileges, jump on that early, because credentialing takes forever. And that way you have your capacity like ready to go, so you can do a lot of anesthesia cases right off the bat. Because when you go from, say you have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 comp exams in a day, maybe you can produce like $1,000 in that first day. But if you can do 3 or 4 in-office GA cases, that's probably going to be 6, 8, 9, 10 grand a day. So you need to get those days like up and going early and not wait on them. It's
ASAP.
huge.
So I love that, because what you're doing is you're reverse engineering how to drive more GA days by the marketing that you're doing. So
For sure.
you're networking, you're going to the hospitals, and you're talking about those big things so that you can fill that in. And then slowly you're building that hygiene base. I love that, Doc. Really some solid points here and some solid insight. You mentioned that one of the things that you love, and that you kind of really honed in on, was your efficiency. And it's something that I really try to hold my clients back on when it comes to hiring people too quick, and not expanding too many days open. So it's all about driving production per day and efficiency. This is a thing that you were attracted to. Obviously, the more efficient you are, the more profit it drives.
Right.
What are some things that you want to chat about, or you think really changed the game for you as far as efficiency goes?
I think it's maybe worth touching on that. I decided to go 5 days a week right from the start. Like
Wow.
I had
Again.
yeah, let's go. Right. So, my
Not
motto
everybody
was,
could do that. Not everybody
sure.
could do that.
This is like very rural. This, I can give my rural answer and then what I would do if I was in like a suburban America answer.
15,000 people per doc. But look, the 5 days probably made sense for the amount of patient flow. And that's the answer, right?
It did.
So
yeah.
right out of gate, you went 5?
Right out it actually was an issue with the lending because Wells Fargo, who did my loan, didn't want to lend to me without a guaranteed associateship. And I'm like, I've got some cash handy. I've got a solid business plan. I know like I'm going to crush it. There's no, like, I'm going to work every hour if I have to. And so like, I don't want to limit what I can do because I can only give this practice 2 or 3 days a week. And so they let me do it, but I had
burn the boats, baby. Burn the boats.
That's Cortez. Burn the ships. Let's do it. So, so 5 days a week. And in retrospect, it was the best thing that I did because I filled up the 5 days right away. You get profitability, you reach that sooner. And then I was able to reinvest the first profit off the first 6 months to adding more chairs, more staff. And so we just kept able to like reinvest those funds. And then all of a sudden we've got this big giant organization with a lot of chairs running in a very short amount of time. So 5 days a week is kind of key there. I guess that's probably the answer I would get, but that's definitely a rural based answer. Like not everybody can go 5 days a week.
It speaks to the rural pros that started this whole conversation. Again, 2,500 to 1 in Kirkland, someone I just set up could never do that. Kirkland, right. Washington, for example, but it speaks to why you might look at some of these emerging markets. But big picture, Doc, when you did start getting the flow, how fast did you hire? You had to hire probably pretty quick because you were getting flow. So folks, for the average startup, this might be you in like month 9 to 12 when we start talking about some of the things Dr. Casey had to do. But he was right out of the gate, busy. But what were some of the mechanics of the things that come to mind when you were thinking, okay, is it time to hire someone or should we wait a month? Like,
okay, let me break it down as milestone, like timeline chronologically of milestones,
perfect.
Right? So started 3,000 square feet. I've plumbed for 7 chairs, but I started with 2 open bay and 1 op, and that's enough to get going, right? So I have 3 employees I started with, 1 up front, 1 in back, and 1 hybrid. On month 3, we picked up another gal. And what's nice too, this goes back, I hire all really awesome local employees. Most of them are still with me. Very little turnover. But
no dentistry?
No, actually I did pick some that had some experience in pediatric dentistry. But what's nice about, again, being rural, there's a lot of assistants that live or employees that live in this bedroom community that were commuting. And once you open up, they're like, I want to work. I don't want to drive every day. So another perk, like it's really, I've never had a problem finding employees. Another perk.
Another huge perk. It's awesome.
Yep. Yeah. So and then the local girls, a lot of them have grown up here. They know everybody. They know members of the community. That was generated growth organically in and of itself. So a lot of benefits there, but I hired a 4th. We were in the black, like profitability wise on month 2, which was good, but then just kept reinvesting in. So I added some more chairs at month 6 to start keeping up with the 6-month recalls that were coming in. And so we got it to 5 fully plumbed opera. Like I still have 2 chairs I don't really use on a daily basis, but got to 5 chairs. So I think by the end of the first year, I ended up adding 2 additional employees. So
what were your collections in the first year? Can I ask?
I like to be pretty open because, and again, like you've been caveating it, this was like lower interest rates, is a little bit easier to start up. Like it wasn't quite so expensive 4 years ago. But just because I think it's also nice to know sort of what's possible. But our first year we collected $985.
Dude,
first 12 months.
That's crush. That's crush.
Yeah. And then year 2, we were at about 1.6 and it kept on jumping up from there. But yeah, by the end of year 2, we were up to like my cruising level of staff that we've had since then, as we keep adding and growing. Like I try to run a really lean practice. We don't have a lot of extra bodies sitting around. I like to pay and like take really good care of my team when I find them, but we have 7 employees, myself, and then 7 others, 3 up front, 4 in back, one of which is a hygienist. And
all right,
so
the big question I have now that you're talking about these numbers, $1 million, 1.6 the next, um, just the Bank of America, Wells Fargo came from the same school of banking. We these banks ask you guys for your numbers throughout the year just to make sure you're on par, and they actually harvest those numbers and use those numbers to underwrite, right? And so the average pedo startup in their first year is 400. The next year is like 450. Can you believe that? So you're double what the average startup was, which is fantastic. But here's the question. Once you started hitting some of these numbers, and a lot of my startups are now in their like third, fourth year, are you talking about keeping all the insurance? As you mentioned, credentialing, you went all credentialing. Did you go Medicaid? No,
Medicaid.
Yep.
Medicaid. Yep. Yeah. I'm the way I had a few ups and downs with that, but in general, I kind of focused in on what were the big employers in our area and what plans, what carriers did they have? And the answer to that question was Delta. So we tried dabbling in the out of network Delta game, but I actually, honestly, I have a pretty good relationship with Delta. If you're rural, you can actually kind of somewhat negotiate to get some decent reimbursement. It's not like it's a hard
They need
and fast
you.
no. They need you.
Actually
I'm the only
need you.
one. So, so Delta, I actually have a good relationship with because I know exactly what they're going to pay. It's just like Medicaid. I'm in network with Delta and the Medicaid plans. It works for me. I love it. Everything else is out of network, and it's so I never took any of the other insurances. We just used the Medicaid as kind of a faucet when I had openings or gaps. We'd turn the Medicaid valve, get more patients coming in, lots of same day dentistry because it was really profitable.
Have you considered now dropping some now that you're so busy?
To be honest, I don't know because I tried right when I first opened staying out with Delta and our patient population. It just didn't work with like mailing the checks. And we had a lot of AR stuff that was hard to follow up on. And then the kids with Medicaid, I like seeing those kids. They're good kids. They need a lot done. I like, again,
you kind of have to. You kind of have to.
You're rural doc, like, you know, it'll break your heart if you're rural and you show up to the furniture company in town and the lady who's selling you furniture, like she very well may have Medicaid and then you can't see her kid. Like, I don't know. It just seems like the right thing to do. And those kids are always the ones that need a lot of help. And I just have never wanted to be the pediatric dentist that doesn't get his hands dirty and just does checks and exams all day. Like I like heavy GA, heavy sedation, lots of crowns, lots of like big hitter dentistry. I feel better like when I work a full day, when I'm doing a lot of heavy hitter dentistry versus checks all day. So I will probably never drop Medicaid. I like seeing Medicaid.
Well, the only reason I ask, and you're 100% right, and as a consultant, I have to say this, but with the proper verbal skills, you can still accept not Medicaid, but let's just talk about all the other insurance companies, but you can still accept their benefits. It's just be out of network and charge what you want. So, but Medicaid's a different conversation. I get that. I think a lot of my clients that have had that big success, the question becomes, do I add those other operators or do I add these other days or do I drop a couple insurances? And you just start looking at your business's scale versus efficiency and profitability. Not that you're not, but it's kind of a fun game to play. And depending on your number, I would say you shouldn't even consider that unless you've hit $1 million.
Can I interject something here, Michael, on the Medicaid topic? Because this
is important.
I've kind of become convinced that seeing Medicaid was one of the better decisions I did right off the bat.
Why?
For a couple of reasons. You're basically getting paid to do marketing because there's so many. I mean, sure, you got to weed out, like there's going to be families that don't value your time and break appointments, and you can develop systems to weed those out. But there's a lot of really awesome families that are dual insured, like dad works at the factory and mom stays at home. They qualify for Medicaid. They have a private XYZ insurance. But like Medicaid, if you see those families and you provide them a really good experience, you're going to get a ton of Google reviews. They're going to tell everybody how awesome you are. It's just going to be the best free word of mouth type marketing. You're going to get paid to market because you're going to be able to help these kids out, fix cavities, provide a great dental home and experience for these kids. The moms are going to love you. They're going to shout your name for the rooftop. And ultimately, like you do have to make sure that it makes sense to break even in your state. Like when I opened, luckily Missouri increased their Medicaid fee reimbursement, but I would argue that if you're doing a startup and if you've got gaps in your schedule, I think it's easy to add Medicaid from the get-go because the administrative side is so easy. You know what you're getting paid. I would say if you can maybe break above like 80 to $100 is pretty good. If you're getting above that through Medicaid for like a recall appointment, probably worth seeing. Stainless steel crown, $100 is like the cutoff. If you can make above $100 on a stainless steel crown, it's probably worth seeing. But some states like Illinois are well under those measures. It doesn't really make sense. Like, you don't want to lose money on it, but there's other hidden monetary benefits besides what's your profit margin per procedure. Like, you're going to have a lot of advertising and marketing, way less administration costs, tracking down accounts receivables on that MetLife claim that didn't pay what you thought. Medicaid is very cut and dry. You can do same day, and like, if you've got time in your schedule, you can start working same day without having to bring the parent back for a second appointment. And so just Medicaid, the profit per procedure is far higher than you think because you save costs in other areas. So definitely really strongly consider looking at it if you're doing a startup in a state that has halfway decent Medicaid.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I think some of those numbers obviously are going to vary on like wages and rental rates and all the different math that you figure out. But I think the core, exactly what Dr. Casey said there, is it's free marketing. And that's every insurance, by the way. You're getting patients. Guys, don't forget, when you do a direct mail or a pay-per-click campaign, you're throwing money out there and you're hoping that the ROI comes back. With insurance and Medicaid, you're taking a lower rate, but they're also sending you patients, and that's the benefit of jumping into network. So think about all the Google reviews too. When you're a startup practice, you have no Google reviews. That might be a reason in itself to just take Medicaid your first year. Because if you can get 250 Google reviews your first year just from Medicaid, that's a winner
for sure.
So I love that tip, and I'm glad that you said that. I think when you're in a rural area, you almost have to, is kind of my feeling. When you start going into some of those more populated areas, I think it's where it gets dicey. Well, we powered through so many topics today. I know you got to go get lunch. I don't want to keep you from lunch. I do want to do a plug for a doc here. He's starting up, or maybe has already started up. Doctor, give us some more information on it, but it's an online course. I haven't even seen it. I just found out about it. I can't endorse it, but I'm excited about seeing it and hearing it. Tell me about this online course that you've got going on.
Yeah, real quick. It's actually kind of a new thing, but basically from being a little bit more active in social media and online in our community and the podcast that I do, I constantly have like young docs reaching out, asking questions like, how'd you put your business plan together? And not really like, tell me how to do the whole thing, but like specific kind of questions. And somewhat selfishly, I just kind of got tired of answering the same questions over and over. And so me and another doc who, Dr. Corey Hastings, has done a ton of really good startups. He's done like 6 ped startups. He's a great pediatric dentist. He and I put our heads together and we're like, let's just like put all of our knowledge and thought on film it all, put it all in a course. And that way it's there. So like, it's not anything we're going to retire off of, but if people are reaching out wanting these questions, instead of like, our time is more valuable now. I don't do half-hour phone calls for free with a bunch of other docs like I used to when I first started up. So I say, hey, we put everything down on this course. It's a couple $100 a month. You can binge it all. And then we just had some professional videos filmed where we just talk about all the major, like, basic terminology, kind of our story, how we did the startup, and tips, a lot of marketing tips. It just, if you follow
are you drinking beer? Are you drinking beer?
I wish I was, because it was it's actually a lot of work to put it all together. But
I want to check this out.
Yeah, it's great. It's just it's not going to help you through the entire process, but I would say it would be good for it's ped specific. So it's called Little Smiles Practice Mastery is the name of the course. It's easy to Google, but it's just an online like monthly subscription course. It's really cheap, but basically it'd be great if you're just interested in knowing, is a startup right for me? And like, what are some basic business acumen terminology? Just get your foot in the door, get comfortable with the lingo. You can power binge the whole thing in just a few days if you want to. And you still, like, you have good resources for, you may need a consultant after that to help you get started. But I feel like it might just give you the confidence that you need. Like, okay, I've seen this recipe laid out. It's not as hard as I think. It makes it less intimidating. And I think it can give listeners that whole, like, I can do this, and then get you started and get you fired up to be an owner.
I think any consulting in general is right for some people, wrong for others. Some people want just to dabble, some people whatever. I think things like this are great. We just put the link down below. We'll put it in the description as well. Dr. Casey, thanks so much for your time, man. I really appreciate you just being open and sharing your knowledge and your experience. Congratulations, dude. You got a freaking awesome business. And I want to know one last thing. Do you regret going into business? And if not, I assume it's no. Should you have done it sooner if you could have?
No, I don't regret it at all. I love entrepreneurship, love business ownership. There's, I would honestly, there's not really anything I would do over again. I think it's a little bit harder to start a practice now than when I did a few years ago. But it's just such a changing dynamic. And I'll leave it on this. When we first started the conversation, we were talking about my mentor being more old school. Times of starting a pediatric office have changed, where we're maybe not in that golden age of doing startups where patients come flooding in. There's much less competition. But on the flip side, we have access to so much more information. Like you're putting out, Michael, putting out podcasts. There's a lot of online resources. There's great podcasts. There's so many other people that have done it, social media. There's never been more information in the history of humanity. So I think, the best time to start a practice was yesterday. And the second best time is today. So hopefully our little conversation could inspire somebody to get going and get after it and burn the ships and start a practice.
I love that, dude. Well said. Guys, again, thank you, Dr. Casey. Go get some lunch. I'm going to segue right into SuperMouth commercial. Guys, I'm dead serious. You got to check it out. It's a great program. Without further ado, thanks again for the time. And again, guys, be looking for the conversion, the switch over from startup unscripted to dental unscripted. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in. Let's rock and roll here with the SuperMouth.
SuperMouth is whole mouth health. It supports the mouth's natural microbiome and promotes healthy teeth, meaning that it can slow down and fight decay, reducing the need for drilling.
I'll take it.
Fill out everyday questions about each family member and be connected with your own super dentist to customize a routine specialized for any stage of development.
I wish I'd known about SuperMouth.
A revolutionary approach to mouth care for healthier, happier, more successful kids.